The room was too cold for a smile like that. But Matt Gaetz wore it anyway. Under the studio lights, with cameras already rolling, he leaned back in his chair, arms relaxed, eyes narrowed, lips curled. The kind of smile that wasn't about charm. It was about control. Jasmine Crockett sat across from him, composed, not angry, not even tense, just waiting. "Before we begin," Matt said, his voice dripping with performance, "I just want to say how honored I am to be across from Congresswoman Crockett. Always a pleasure to debate someone who reads headlines and hashtags." The moderator chuckled nervously. Jasmine didn't move. "Let's talk facts," Matt continued, flipping through a thin folder in front of him. "We've got rising crime, open borders, foreign threats, and what's her biggest concern?" He turned to the camera. Racial equity. A few chuckles from the audience. Matt smirked again. Jasmine still didn't speak, because sometimes silence isn't hesitation, it's calculation. Backstage, a producer whispered, "She's gonna let him hang himself." And maybe she was. Matt leaned in this time, emboldened. "I mean, seriously, Jasmine." He used her first name like a weapon, like a dismissal. "Do you honestly believe that showing up with identity politics is the way to fix this country?" He smiled wide now, like the moment was already his. Jasmine slowly reached for her folder. She didn't open it, not yet, just let her hand rest on it, like a pressure point waiting to be tapped. "Mr. Gaetz," she said finally, "when you're done performing, let me know. I came here to present something real." Matt raised his eyebrows. "Oh? A new opinion piece?" Jasmine smiled, not wide, not friendly, just enough. "Number evidence dot." And that was it. The shift. Suddenly, his smirk felt too loud, her silence too heavy. The audience noticed. So did the cameras. And in that moment, one thing became clear. She wasn't here to argue. She was here to prove. Matt Gaetz tapped his fingers on the desk, casual, smug. "Let's see this so-called evidence." Jasmine didn't flinch. She opened the folder, deliberately, methodically, like someone flipping open a case file they already knew by heart. The audience leaned in. Inside were not sound bites, not theories, not slogans. They were records, signatures, official statements, and one headline, printed in bold. Matt Gaetz urged DOJ to drop sex trafficking inquiry into Ally. The moderator blinked. Matt stopped tapping. "What is that?" he asked, with a laugh that cracked halfway through. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. "Your record, Congressman, your affiliations, your pressure campaigns, your silence when it served you, and your outrage when it didn't." She slid the page forward. "You wanted to talk about facts. Here they are." In writing, Matt's smile began to twitch. "That has nothing to do with this debate." "It has everything to do with it," Jasmine replied, "because you came here to attack my character. I came here to show yours." The studio went still. For the first time, Gaetz wasn't posturing. He was reacting. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know what's public record, and I know when someone hides behind patriotism to avoid accountability." Jasmine turned to the moderator. "Should I keep going? Or is that enough transparency for one segment?" The moderator hesitated. Matt said nothing, because in that moment the table had flipped, and Jasmine hadn't even raised her voice. Online, the clip was already trending. Jasmine Crockett drops dossier on live TV. Matt Gaetz's smirk dies mid-show. Silence is loud when you're cornered by truth. Back at the table, Jasmine closed her folder. "Now," she said calmly, "shall we return to the issues? Or are we still pretending this is theater?" Matt Gaetz straightened in his chair. The smirk was gone, replaced by something else. A mixture of confusion, frustration, and calculation. "So now you're playing prosecutor?" he snapped. "This isn't a courtroom, Congresswoman." Jasmine leaned forward, calm as ever. "Number, but it's still public record. And the people watching? They're the jury." The moderator tried to intervene. Let's keep the discussion focused on. On what? Jasmine cut in. On vague accusations about crime rates? On deflecting with buzzwords and half-truths? She slid another paper across the table. This time, campaign donations. From private prison contractors to you. Matt looked down, then away. That's not illegal, he muttered. No, Jasmine said, but it explains your votes, and it explains your outrage every time I bring up systemic injustice. The audience was silent, not bored, gripped. Because something rare was happening. A politician was being cornered by the truth, and the person holding the corner steady was a black woman in a blazer. Matt tried again. So you're saying I can't support law enforcement without being corrupt? No, Jasmine replied. I'm saying you can't lecture me on morality while hiding behind a record full of contradictions. Matt turned to the moderator. Are you going to let her grandstand? Is it grandstanding? Jasmine said. If it's backed by receipts? Another ripple in the crowd. The cameras loved every second. And still, Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to, because the louder Matt tried to be, the clearer her quiet truth became. Online, headlines were forming mid-broadcast. Crockett corners Gaetz with campaign docs. Every time he spoke, she had paper. Matt Gaetz regretted smiling that day. Matt Gaetz took a breath, visibly trying to regain footing. Look, this is all a distraction. I came here to talk about real threats, inflation, crime, and foreign enemies. Jasmine didn't blink. And I came here to talk about the truth. She held up one more page, just a single chart. A simple breakdown of congressional voting records. Highlighted in red, Matt's repeated votes against bills that would increase veteran health care, expand food access, or regulate predatory lending. These are your priorities, Congressman, Jasmine said. You call it patriotism, but it looks more like protection, for the powerful, not the people. Matt leaned in, his tone sharper. You don't know the first thing about sacrifice. Jasmine leaned in too, voice cool. I know the difference between service and self-interest. And I know what it looks like when someone hides behind the flag to avoid accountability. The moderator sat frozen. Producers in the back whispered, We can't cut away from this. This is the moment. Jasmine turned to the audience, not just in the studio, but through the lens. Every time we try to talk about justice, someone shifts the focus to fear. Every time we name the real wounds of this country, someone says, now's not the time. She laid the chart down flat. If not now, when? Matt stayed silent. His jaw was set, but his words were gone. Because this wasn't political sparring anymore. It was exposure. The hashtags hit hard and fast. If not now, when Jasmine V's the noise. Receipts, speak louder. And as the segment wrapped, one thing was clear. Jasmine didn't come for applause. She came for accountability. And now, the burden was on Matt to explain why the truth made him so nervous. Matt suddenly leaned forward, voice rising. Let me tell you something. The American people are tired of this race baiting, this identity politics, this guilt campaign you run. The room tightened. The audience froze. Even the moderator looked alarmed. Jasmine, though, didn't flinch. She tilted her head slightly. Say that again, she said softly. Matt blinked. I said, people are tired of... No, Jasmine interrupted. You said race baiting, as if naming injustice is more dangerous than the injustice itself. She slowly rose to her feet, not aggressive, anchored. Let me tell you something, Congressman. When you say identity politics, you mean stop reminding us who we've excluded. When you say guilt campaign, you mean stop telling the truth out loud. Matt tried to interject. That's not... You want silence, because silence lets you stay in control. But silence is a privilege, one I won't afford you today. The audience erupted in murmurs, not outrage, awakening. Even the studio lights seemed to shift, like Jasmine had stepped into full command of the space. Then she dropped one final page on the desk, a testimony from a Gaetz donor, a billionaire developer caught funding voter suppression efforts in 3 states. You keep talking about patriotism, Jasmine said, but what you protect is power, not people. Matt was frozen. No smirk, no fire, just exposed. And in that moment, Jasmine leaned closer, not to threaten, to whisper the loudest line of the night. You called it a debate. I called it a receipt check. Online, the quote exploded. Silence is a privilege. You called it a debate. I called it a receipt check. Privilege is louder when it panics. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the segment clock ran down. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't done. Not yet. Matt Gaetz sat stiffly, hands clasped, mouth shut. Not because he chose silence, but because Jasmine had stolen the air from the room. I didn't come here to trade punches, she said, her voice calm. I came here to hold up a mirror. She turned to the moderator. Do you have the courage to ask him what I just showed you? The moderator hesitated. Well, I think the audience can draw their own conclusions. That's the problem, Jasmine said, standing straighter. Too many conclusions. Not enough clarity. She picked up her final page. It wasn't a document this time. It was a photo. A mother. Tears streaming down her face, holding a folded American flag. This isn't a symbol of pride to everyone. To some, it's a folded reminder of who was sacrificed and who was protected. She looked directly at Matt. You vote against health care for vets. You fight against voting rights. But you smile on camera and say you love this country. She placed the photo in front of him. That flag doesn't need your smile. It needs your integrity. Silence. But it wasn't awkward. It was earned. The control room was locked in. No one blinked. No one spoke. Matt finally whispered, This isn't fair. Jasmine replied without hesitation. Number it isn't. It never has been. But today, at least, it's visible. And just like that, the segment ended. Not with applause, not with outrage, just with a nation watching a man lose the one thing he'd always counted on: control. Online, clips flooded every feed. She showed a photo. He had no words. You called it patriotism. She called it avoidance. Integrity over image. The moderator tried to move on. Let's shift the conversation. But Jasmine raised a hand, not to interrupt, to hold the room still. Before we pivot to inflation or foreign policy, she said softly, can we ask a more basic question? She held up the photo again. The mother, the flag, the absence. When did we become more loyal to our comfort than to our conscience? Matt Gaetz didn't respond. He couldn't, because this wasn't about him anymore. This wasn't about votes or polls. This was about us. You talk about America, Jasmine said, but you defend an image of it that doesn't include everyone in this room. She scanned the crowd. A young Latina producer wiped her eyes. A black camera operator stiffened his jaw. When you say patriotism, Jasmine continued, what you really mean is compliance. Matt leaned forward, just slightly. You're twisting everything. No, Jasmine said. I'm untwisting it. She stepped away from the desk now, no longer debating, delivering. I've been told to calm down. I've been told to wait my turn. I've been told that truth makes people uncomfortable. But maybe it should. The audience didn't clap. They didn't need to, because the power in Jasmine's voice wasn't in its volume. It was in its precision. Backstage, a staffer whispered, she didn't just win the segment. She changed the temperature of the room. Jasmine returned to her seat, looked directly at Matt. No anger, no smugness, just one quiet sentence. Now we can talk about inflation, if you're still up for honesty. Online reactions were instant. She didn't debate. She dismantled. Matt brought a smile. Jasmine brought a mirror. Truth first, no volume needed. Matt Gaetz shifted in his seat. He straightened his tie, cleared his throat, and spoke. Listen, I get it. Congresswoman Crockett is passionate. She has a way with words. But let's not pretend emotion equals fact. He paused, expecting applause. None came. Jasmine didn't even look up, because she didn't need to. The energy had shifted. The audience wasn't watching him anymore. They were remembering her. Matt tried again. We can't let guilt rewrite our national story. We need unity, not division. But someone in the crowd said, just loud enough to be heard, unity without justice is just silence. The camera caught it, the internet clipped it, and suddenly, the debate was no longer about policy, it was about perspective. Jasmine finally turned to him. Did you hear that? She asked. What? Matt said defensively. The voice from the audience. That wasn't mine. That wasn't a talking point. That was America speaking back. The moderator tried to take control. Let's stay on topic. We are, Jasmine said, because the topic isn't just numbers. It's narrative. It's who gets to speak and who gets erased. Matt's smile returned slightly, but this time it looked thin, forced. He gestured toward Jasmine. You're very good at making this personal. Jasmine leaned forward. It is personal. To every family who lost someone and never saw policy change. To every voter who stood in line for 6 hours because someone like you called it security. To every child who pled for justice and got ignored for ratings. The silence was louder than any monologue. Even Matt felt it. He wasn't debating anymore. He was on trial. On social media, when the audience speaks louder than the guest. Matt tried to regain control. Jasmine had already handed it to the The moderator gave the final word to Jasmine. Congresswoman Crockett, closing remarks. She stood slowly. No rush, no fire, just gravity. She didn't glance at Matt, didn't even face him. She looked directly into the camera. There are moments in history that aren't won by shouting, they're won by showing. And today, I didn't raise my voice. I raised a mirror. Behind her, Matt shifted uncomfortably, but the camera stayed locked on Jasmine. We talk about patriotism as if it belongs to a party, as if one group owns the flag and the rest of us are borrowing it. But I've seen mothers bury sons who believed in that flag. I've seen soldiers come home to eviction notices. I've seen voters turned away because the rules mysteriously changed. She stepped forward, just a little, and the room got quieter. Patriotism isn't smiling on camera. It's showing up when nobody claps. It's telling the truth when nobody wants to hear it. Matt crossed his arms, but the audience wasn't watching him. Not anymore. I didn't come here to win a moment, Jasmine said. I came here to protect the memory of every person who was silenced in moments like these. The lights didn't flash. There was no music swell, just a stillness, the kind that stays with you longer than applause. And then she said the line that would go viral by sunrise. You called it a debate. I called it a reckoning. Across the country, phones lit up. The debate was over. The chairs were empty. The lights were dimming. The credits rolled. But the conversation, it was just beginning. Clips of Jasmine's closing words spread across the internet like a spark in dry grass. Even those who didn't watch the broadcast were quoting her by midnight. You called it a debate. I called it a reckoning. It wasn't just a line. It was a diagnosis of everything the country had been swallowing in silence. Matt Gaetz? He made no post-debate press rounds, no victory tweets, no post-Smirk selfies, because there was nothing to celebrate, not when the room turned into a witness box, and he was the one on record. Jasmine, meanwhile, walked out of that studio like she had simply done her job. No grandstanding, no "I told you so," just grace and truth. In the days that followed, 3 major news outlets ran full features titled, "The Day Jasmine Crockett Changed the Rules of Debate." Fact-checkers confirmed every document she presented, and released even more she didn't need to. And most stunning of all, that smile, the one Matt wore when he sat down, it never showed up again. In one broadcast, Jasmine had shifted the dynamic, not just between two politicians, but between truth and narrative, between volume and value, between the performance of power and the power of presence. And as one young viewer posted that night, Jasmine didn't destroy him, she reminded him who the truth belongs to. The smile died at that table, and in its place, something far louder was born: respect. I didn't come here to perform. I came to protect the truth. I came because too many people are tired of watching their lives debated by people who've never lived them. You don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to tear down to build power. And you don't need permission to speak when the truth is on your side. If standing up for justice makes some uncomfortable, good. That means we're finally facing what we've been avoiding. This wasn't just about one debate. This was a reminder. The truth doesn't need applause, it just needs a voice. And I'll be that voice, as long as someone's still listening.